This isn't the museum that you remember.
It's still a home to Lunenburg County's heritage and to Bridgewater's story, but now it's so much more.
A hub of art and culture.
A home to events and celebrations, to the things that we hold dear and that make us special.
To experiences that are universal. And now, we need you.
The Bridgewater Museum Commission is looking for new members.
For just a few hours of your time each month, you can help the museum grow.
Help shape programming to welcome new residents and to make them feel at home.
Help to tell stories that need to be heard.
And help Des Brisay Museum thrive as a center for heritage, art, and culture in our community.
For more info or to apply, visit bridgewater.ca/serve.
I'm Amanda Fancy. I'm the dealer-owner of Gauss Home Hardware and Furniture. We've been at this location for about a year. We started in 1848, way back when. This is our 5th location, so we've never have left the town limits. So we're looking to build this location. We had lots of opportunity to potentially look at outside of the town limits, but it was really key for us to be and continue to be a growing business in Bridgewater. Bridgewater, Nova Scotia is unique. We have a beautiful countryside. Our town is 7,500 people, but then, our customer reach is about 45,000. So, we're talking about lots of small communities, hidden treasures. There's huge opportunity here, and I think that it's certainly worthwhile to make the visit, make the call, do some inquiring, because it certainly is somewhere where I think there would be some strong investment opportunities for sure.
My name is Joey Richard. I come from Quebec, Montreal. I've studied opera at the Montreal Conservatoire of Music, so this is where I've learned about Italian, the language, and the food. And my passion just became bigger and bigger for food. I've been cooking for 20 years, almost. I opened a family business, but the only thing I forgot is that my family is still in Montreal, so I'm like, I make new friends, I'm building this thing, but it is a family business here. My chef is like my brother, his wife is like my sister, so I recreated a family environment. We do the real recipes, starting from the real ingredients, and for Italian food, what the secret is, few ingredients and very fresh. So each recipe would be like 3-4 ingredients maximum. But it's just the best ingredients and makes it so delicious. If you think that it's impossible to have your own business, I'm the living proof that it is possible. People want us to thrive. We work together. So everybody helps each other. If you want to be part of a community, it is the community to be part of.
My name is Joel Holland. I'm the owner and operator of 902 Athletics. I found the opportunity, started this gym in my parents' garage, and now we are currently in an 8,600 square foot facility. A lot of people come here because of the community. The things that we offer here are different than a normal gym. It's an open atmosphere where you come in, the music's played over the loudspeakers, not in your ears. You don't put earbuds in and just walk around from one machine to the other. You focus on yourself, but at the same time you get to meet new people. We have 3 floors.
All right, folks, it's 7 o'clock and we have our timed item now, which is the 2022-23 operating and capital budget. And so I'll turn it over to the CAO and staff to walk us through the rest of our meeting.
Okay. So tonight we're going to give you a high-level overview, just a recap of the budget and what council will achieve in the budget. We will review with you just quickly the operating and capital reserves to show you the revised amounts there and what's changed since our last meeting where we had met with council to talk about options to address the deficit that was within our budget. So we have, that should say 22-23. We do have a budget that is balanced this time around. So the operating budget is $25.9 million. So that's a 9% increase over last year. The capital budget is an aggressive capital budget at $16.6 million. Okay. And that is this year's capital funding, and we have about $10.9 million in capital carry forwards on top of that. That we're bringing revenue from last year over to finalize those projects. So it is a very large capital budget and a demonstration of our investment in infrastructure in the town. The tax rates for this year were proposed to remain the same, so no increase in residential or commercial or special purpose tax. So 1.75 per every 100 for residential, 3.97 per every 100 for commercial, and 6 cents per every 100 for the Lunenburg County Lifestyle Center special purpose tax, which is the tax to pay back the capital debt for the construction of the facility. Wastewater rates are proposed to increase 5%, and the increase will be going to reserve to help offset future capital requirements for our wastewater system. So the rate for within the town boundary will be $487.89 annually for residential and $1,036.28 for commercial annually as well. So through this budget and with those amounts, council's strategic priorities are being implemented, and you'll see that reflected in the work programs of the departments. In terms of community prosperity, the big theme is the investment in our infrastructure. So as mentioned, with the $16 million budget of new projects plus 10 and carry forwards, we're investing heavily in our wastewater, our roads, and the Exit 12A interchange project with the expansion of the Bridgewater Business Park. So we have $3.6 million in for the park expansion. We're investing over $5 million in wastewater. Road upgrades are $4 million with $800,000 in pavement management, and some significant road improvements on High Street. We're doing some Empire design, and you'll see some improvements on the St. Philip Street as well. And we're also, amongst other things, continuing with the redevelopment of the Bridgewater Memorial Arena. So this year, there's $200,000 that is going into improvements to accommodate the South Shore players. And we recently, at a previous meeting, just added another 30 to do some renovations so that we can accommodate the farmers market this season. In terms of placemaking, we continue in this budget to look at the implementation of the active transportation plan. The big project there is the High Street. With the improvements of the road, we'll be looking at a multi-use trail system along High Street, and we are applying for funding for that. We're continuing to implement the open space plan, so you'll see lots of parks improvements and signage for parks and trails being acquired there. This year, we're also looking at an affordable housing grant, and there's $25,000 in the budget to explore that. And we continue with the Energized Bridgewater program. And while the $1.7 million is towards program development, we, within our budget, support an expanded PACE program this year as well. So we've had a significant amount of funding that's been provided to us to enable us to offer very low interest loans to our residents for energy efficiency upgrades. Continuing on the theme of placemaking and quality of life, we continue to invest in the Lunenburg County Lifestyle Center. So we'll see in the budget $527,000 for operating and $136,000 for capital. And so that's the town's contribution towards the facility. In recognition of our nonprofit organizations and the supports and programs that they provide to the community, Council has grants in the amount of $29,000 plus property tax exemptions in the amount of $101,000 that's provided to nonprofits, and we continue to invest in emergency response. So the net cost for policing, which provides for a high quality of life of our residents, is $4 million. Fire services is at 1.4, and REMO is at 31,000. Internally within the organization itself, we're looking at, in terms of fiscal responsibility, and as mentioned, an increase in our wastewater rate, our sewer rate, and that enables us to contribute $668,000 to our reserves. And when you look at our 10-year capital plan, you can see why funding our wastewater reserve is important for us to do. And we continue to source grants. So we show grants in our capital plan where we know there's grants, but our grant coordinator is also continuously sourcing grants for our capital projects. With respect to organizational excellence, we continue through this budget to look at internal control measures. So there's funding for time and attendance. We'll be looking at the fraud risk assessment. Records management continues with scanning of files, so we have some funds for that, as well as enabling electronic submissions for procurement for tenders and RFPs. And we continue to explore the regional building and fire inspection services model, and there's $80,000 within our budget to implement that this year. So that's looking at software customizations and to both Laserfiche and TownSuite. So this is a high-level summary of the budget. So it's $25.9 million. Our non-tax revenue is 4.2, so those are things generated outside of the tax rate itself. And we have transfers from reserves for our operating of $330,000, so that leaves us with the need to acquire from tax revenue $21.3 million. This shows you where your tax dollars go, so it's just a quick way to kind of see where some of the larger consumers are with respect to services and what percentage they represent in terms of our budget. So you can see it. Police is the bigger piece of the pie, and then we move to engineering and public works, which is engineering roads, sidewalks, those types of things. And then we have mandatory contributions, which are corrections, housing, education is a big piece of that as well, assessment services. And then we have wastewater, parks, and it goes from there. So it just gives you a different way of looking at how your tax dollars are spent. And then this shows the mandatory contributions and what makes up the mandatory contributions. So you can see that education is a big component of that, right? So that's a big part of that, of our operating budget. This mandatory contributions is around 10.9%. And this is how we pay for everything. So tax revenue is a larger piece of that, so there is a reliance on our tax rate to fund our budget. But in addition to that, we do have sales of services, so that would be credit checks, tax certificates, those types of things. Plus, we have revenue from owned sources, so it could be parking, permits, interest. And then we have grants. So there's conditional grants, which come, usually grants to fund a particular project. And then we have unconditional, which means there's no conditional projects to fund. It comes without those requirements. So equalization would be an example of that type of grant. This shows you your mandatory contributions, just to see kind of how those have increased over the last fiscal year. So overall, with all the various ups and downs within each category, it's $50,000 more this year to fund mandatory contributions. And this shows you that our budget, our adjusted baseline, which is if we did nothing new, just kept it at our core delivery, it's $25.1 million. Then we had additions, so most of those additions are kind of one-time things or improvements to service. So there was $1.3 million of additions, but then we backed out from our previous budget last year, $569,000. So that leaves you with a revised budget of 25.9. This is the operating reserve, and this shows you our balance as of March 31st, 2022, what we estimate that to be at $10.1 million. And then when you see brackets, that is money coming out of the reserve to fund initiatives within our budget, and then anything without a bracket is money going in. So you can kind of see how we propose to fund some things using our operating reserve. And some of those reserves is to fund projects that we had last year and we had to carry over too. So you can see at the end of the year, there is $7.6 million estimated to be in the reserve. So we are using some of that reserve. But I mentioned a good portion of that is to do with capital projects and capital carry forwards as well. So you can see the numbers here. There's $1.45 million for capital carry forwards and $1.2 million for capital. And this is your capital reserve, and the estimated balance as of March 31st, 22 is 3.6. And you can see the funding going in. So there's gas tax funding that goes in, and then there's money that we pull out to fund capital projects. There's interest income that would be going in, staying with the reserve, earned there and staying there, with an estimated balance of 2.3. And then we have a capital loan balance where we borrowed from reserve to fund some projects. So that comes off to leave us with a $2.14 million balance in our capital reserve. So at our last meeting, Kim did speak to council about the amount that we have in reserves and what some of the recommended best practices are. So we're fairly on target, in particular in our operating reserve and with your policies that you've established. Just quickly, when I had presented to council just pre-budget some reports on resource requirements, council had asked that we pull those out, you look at the budget, and then you make a determination with respects to what positions you may or may not be able to accommodate within the budget. So part of the report to council had some term positions that are already in the budget. They're already there. They're planned for this year, but their term will be expiring. They were hired on a 2-year term, and we don't envision the need for those positions ceasing anytime soon. So one was in the planning and development section with the planning development technician. And so that one, there was a recommendation to council that we turn that into permanent, in recognition that we want to be able to retain that employee and not lose them. And then the facility maintenance technician. So this one too was one where we had hired the individual for a 2-year term, and it's been demonstrated that we're able to do more of our own facility maintenance without having to contract that out with that position. So it's recommended that go from term to permanent as well. And in terms of new positions, we, after various meetings and going through the budget to determine what was in and what was out with respects to public works, it was confirmed that we do have 2 seasonals that essentially work full-time hours. I think there's about 2 or 3 weeks that they're laid off, but other than that, we've been using them as full-time. So the recommendation was to make them full-time, to reflect the hours that they're working. And then there was a recommendation to have 3 seasonal positions brought in. And that's in recognition of the large capital budget that we have and the maintenance projects that we have, and also to help alleviate the overtime issues that and costs that we have when we don't have the staff there to do the projects and we have to have staff work overtime. So within our budget, the way that projects are budgeted for is we either have the labor or we have the contract labor. So pulling them out doesn't change the number. The challenge is being able to get the contract labor for smaller jobs. That becomes the real challenge. So it's suggested that we use those funds, and instead of using contract labor, that we bring in seasonal labor to do that work. This is your 10-year capital budget, and this hasn't, I think the capital budget has changed slightly in an amount, which we'll go over in the next slide, but the 10-year capital plan hasn't changed. So this shows you the total budgets for each year, and as you can tell, it's easier to predict the closer we are to 2022, and the further we go out, the harder it is to predict that 10-year. And we show our funding sources that we know of. So gas tax is a constant. Grants, where we know we have them, we put them in. And then we have showing some reserve funding, and then borrowing. So we also show your debt service ratio. So as was mentioned at the last meeting, the question about why don't we just assume with grants that we're going to get a couple million in this year every couple years. So we did. Kim ran a scenario where we looked at, say, 5 million over the next 4 or 5 years, and what would that look like? And it doesn't really change your debt service ratio significantly. So we kind of concluded that you would need a really big number to affect your debt service ratio, and that 5 million over 4 years wasn't going to do that. And realistically, with the infrastructure funding, that's we'll be lucky to get the 5 million. So it's that's probably your worst case scenario, and every year council will have to decide what projects you can or can't do. But this is based on what we know today. And if we assume more funding than we think may be possible, then it might paint a picture that could be too optimistic when you're looking at your capital investment decisions. So this is perhaps a bit conservative, but it shows it as we know it right now. And there are lots of variables that affect your debt service ratio. So this shows it in a graph form where we kind of peak around 27, 28, and then we start to go back down a bit. But there's revenue. So your debt service ratio is basically your debt service cost, your principal and interest, divided by your revenue. So your revenue that you bring in is a variable. So if your assessments go up or your tax rate changes, your revenue changes, right? So your number can change. Or if you get grants, which lessens the amount you have to borrow, so which lessens your debt servicing costs as well. So there are variables in it that can affect that. And so we'll look at this every year to see where we are. So this is your capital budget, and as I mentioned, there was a slight change from March 25th. We have a 16.69, and it's 16.61. So I don't know what changed in there.
The 2 capital items that were removed, the town hall heat pump and the security cameras.
Okay. Thank you. And then that affects kind of the capital from operating as well.
Yes.
Because those were funded that way. So this shows you that this year 16.6 million, we're bringing 1.2 million from operating to fund the capital. We had 2.8 million in grants, 1.3 from gas tax. So we had a couple years of double gas tax from the federal government. So we're using that up, and we're projecting to borrow 9.9 million. And we're also using 1.2 from operating reserve again for the new capital this year. So we went over these at the last meeting. When we came to you on March 28th, we had a deficit of 106,000, so we made some adjustments in there. And we came back at our last meeting with 89,000 as the deficit based on some of the changes we were able to make. And then at the last meeting on April 4th, these are the changes that were discussed by council. So the security cameras moved to a future year. The town hall heat pumps moved out to a future year, but we had to add in 5,000 for maintenance, so we put that in. The green charter, we postponed that for a future year's budget consideration. That we had to add in 8,500 for our portion of the tipping fee increase at the waste site based on the joint services budget, as well as our portion of the IT budget. And then we had 6,051 that did we add that to the, we took that out of the contingency? It should have went in. It should have went in.
It went in.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just
Yeah.
adjusted that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just kind of the balance
Yeah.
that was left over.
So that brings us to a total of 89,722 that we found to offset that, and that balances our budget. So we do have a whole list of motions, and Sandra's consolidated them in eScribe, that basically, when council's ready and comfortable with the budget, that you would be approving the operating capital, setting the tax rates, the wastewater rate, setting the interim conditions for the interim tax bill in terms of using the new tax rate in this year's assessment, setting the date for the final tax billing as September 29th, given that September 30th is now a holiday for the Truth and Reconciliation, and then, as I say, our sewer rates, and then the rates for sewer outside of the town within Hebron. So those are all there.
You good?
We're good.
That's great. Questions from council? Either the presentation or in the budget. Councillor Colwell.
Just a question based on last meeting. We discussed removal of the traffic lights at the corner of Dufferin and York. So I was just wondering about the removal timeline. I was wondering if they may be removed early in the summer to allow drivers a chance to adjust before school starts in September. I wonder if that might be something engineering would consider.
That's
I have to defer to Larry to see if you have a plan for the date of when you hope to remove them.
There's no specific date, but that's certainly something to keep in mind.
that would certainly lessen any impact versus doing it in September and students and changes. Yeah.
Yeah, for safety too, right?
Yep.
Just so drivers would be used to it by then.
No, that's good. Thanks for raising that. Other questions? Or comments? Councillor Thorburn?
When we show the operating and capital reserves and balance and whatnot, is there any reflection in there of how our revenue is going to increase and how the effect that will have on the upcoming budgets? I know we've seen a big increase this year with the residential rate and up, but is any of those numbers shown in the capital budget?
In the 10-year capital plan and the debt service ratio, in the looking at kind of our debt affordability model, I know there were some conservative assumptions on assessment growth that are built into that model. And that's where you would probably see assumptions about future assessment growth. And I think, can you use, what, 2% or?
Somewhere between 2 and 3%, more aggressive for next fiscal year because we have a little better idea of where that's going, but then it kind of reverts back to kind of a more conservative. Once we get into next year, we'll have a little bit better sense of where it's going. But obviously, we don't want to project that assessment growth to be too high, assume our debt service ratio is okay, and make decisions based on a too aggressive of an assumption. So it's kind of moderate, I'd say, with what we know now, and then a more conservative long-range plan.
And can we put operating reserves up there?
Yeah.
That undesignated operating reserve, would that be monies put in there held for other organizations like the Legion and whatnot?
No, those are items, that's monies that are sitting that are not allocated to a specific use.
So they're not in that reserve?
If you look at our list of what we're, the tennis club and the, retaining walls and things like that, that's the amount it's usually built up of prior year surpluses that go in without a specific use or designation. And of that $1.2 million, keep in mind we got a double equalization payment.
Yeah.
Equalization's old term, sorry.
Yes, I know.
But we did get a double payment, which was $531,000. So we did budget and we knew it was surprise money. It wasn't, we hadn't budgeted to receive that extra money. So it's in our projections as going into the reserve, and then we're using it for funding some of the capital this year. So it was, that's part of that undesignated because it went in without a specific direction of council for it to be in a reserve for.
Okay, great, thanks.
Other comments or questions? I know we had a few rounds of this. Not seeing any more. Is someone prepared to make the first motion? Deputy Mayor Tanner?
No.
Oh, Councilor Thorburn?
They can make the first one.
All right, who wants to start us off? I thought it was maybe too short a motion for you. You're like,
yeah, I know. You kind of fooled me this year. But it looks better this way. So I would move that council of the town of Bridgewater approve the revised capital carry forward projects from the physical 2021 to 2022 to the physical 2022-2023 in the amount of $10,296,977, including the reserve transfers to fund the same. Approve the 2022-23 capital budget in the amount of $16,613,200, and with the funding including these reserve transfers, approve 2022-2023 operating budget in the amount of $25,933,195, including the reserve transfers as presented in the draft budget document dated April 8th, 2022.
thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Tanner. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Someone prepared to make the second motion? Councillor Caldwell.
I move the council for the town of Bridgewater set the 2022-23 commercial tax rate at $3.97 per $100 of assessment. Set the 2022-23 residential tax rate at $1.75 per $100 of assessment, and set the special purpose tax rate, commercial and residential, for the payment of debenture principal and interest to the Lunenburg County Multipurpose Center at 6 cents per $100 of assessment.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor McDonald. Further discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Is someone prepared to make the next motion? Deputy Mayor Tanner? Thank you.
I move the council for the town of Bridgewater set the 2022-23 annual sewer charges for properties in the town of Bridgewater connected to the public service sewer of the town as follows. Residential and land lease communities, $487.89 for one dwelling unit plus $185.89 for each additional dwelling unit. Hotels, motels, a base charge of $1,036.28 plus $59.59 for each guest unit. Hospitals, a base charge of $1,036.28 plus $59.59 for each patient bed. Other commercial, shopping centers, institution, and industrial users for first user, $1,036.28 plus $530.22 for each additional user.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Thorburn. Discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Just got a couple more. Someone prepared to make the next motion? Councillor Frazier?
Yes, Your Worship. Move that council for the town of Bridgewater set the 2022-23 annual sewer charges for properties within the municipality of the District of Lunenburg connected to the sewage collection system in Headville as follows. Residents and land lease communities a per unit charge of $583.35. Commercial shopping centers, institutional and industrial users a per unit charge of $1,239.02.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Conklin. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. And the final motion for this budget, Councillor Conklin.
I move that council for the town of Bridgewater, in accordance with Policy 92, direct staff to generate interim tax bills for fiscal 2022-23 with the current year's taxable assessment and the 2022-23 tax and sewer rates as approved by council on April 11th, 2022. And the interim tax bill shall be due on Tuesday, May 31st, 2022, that the final tax bill for fiscal 2022-23 shall become due on Thursday, September 29th, 2022, and that the interest on overdue accounts be set at 12% per annum, charged at 1% per month.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Thorburn. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. I'd like to thank staff, seniors management, led by our CAO and our Director of Finance for what started out as, I think, is a difficult and rocky budget, and through your effort. The first draft that council received, I know, took some effort to get to where it was, and then I want to really thank council as well for going through, again, what was a difficult budget and getting it back to balance and finding efficiencies, finding some savings, making difficult decisions, balancing those needs and wants for the community while recognizing that we have to move forward. We have massive obligations for infrastructure improvement when it comes to wastewater, roads. We know we have major investments to make in roads. We know we're probably not where we need to be, but we'll claw our way back. I love that the trail maintenance, winter trail maintenance, is staying in there. I think we all got a lot of feedback when that came in, kind of at that first winter of the pandemic. A lot of people using that. So there's a lot of things in there. There's a lot of good news stories in there, which I wasn't sure at the beginning would be in there because, again, it was a very difficult budget. And I know just being in the building and understanding when senior management met, that first draft was very difficult. So, thank you to our staff team led by the CAO and Director of Finance. Any other comments from members of council? That, Councillor Caldwell?
I'll just want to reassure the public that lack of debate tonight has nothing to do with a lack of due diligence, that this has been a series of, this is a culmination of many meetings where we discussed the budget and finally came to a consensus for tonight's meeting. So again, just want to let the public know that this has been a long process, as you just said.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you mentioning that. Other comments, Councillor McDonald?
Kind of in a way repeating what you're saying. I really expected a really boring budget. Thought it was going to be rocky and rough, and I thought it was going to be completely occupied by infrastructure. And staff somehow managed to balance the huge need that we have with some other really important projects in the community and enhancements in services, and kind of balancing that out. And I don't know how you did it. That took some serious budgeting skills, some real compromise. I'm sure endless conversations back and forth. And you've all sat here, even engineering with all of that work. I haven't seen you two sweat up there yet. I mean, maybe behind the scenes, but yeah, everyone's kept their composure through all this. And finance keeping us on the track through some, really unprecedented times, and some change in our community that we haven't navigated before, along with community development. The projects that we're seeing, we haven't dealt with this type of development and these type of issues and challenges that come with it and the complexity. And they've helped us navigate that and come into a budget where I at least can feel very comfortable moving forward through the next year with a lot of change and a lot of new experiences and challenges coming at us. I expected this year, going into this year, to feel a little bit less comfort because we were facing so many new things, and I feel very confident going forward, and I always do with this team, but they did a fantastic job this year, and I really appreciate it. And to the police chief, who, when, you know, every year he gets grilled, and we're looking for cuts, and when there was no more to cut, he found a way to increase revenue and surpass our expectations. And I've got to say, the fire department as well, who never ask for, when they ask, it's got $1 million price tag, but they never ask for much, and they plan extremely well. There are never any surprises for us. So, I mean, everybody keeps us on this path that, you know, we say it's rough, but they've made it as easy as possible for us, and I really appreciate it.
Did you have? Yeah.
Just a couple of words, especially to Kim and her staff. And you don't realize until you're sitting around this table how many staff hours and how many people have impact on this budget. It's humongous amount of work done by our dedicated staff. And Jennifer, you and the deputy mayor, when we first come on council, there were 6 of us and a new mayor, and we went line by line, and it took us a long time. I mean, engineering back in 2012, every sidewalk project was a line item, and they couldn't deviate from that unless there was a motion by council to let them do something that wasn't in the budget. So we've changed so much for the better, but it still requires a lot of dedication from our staff and the people in the department here. So I just want to thank them all. Job well done.
Councilor Frazier.
Yes, just like to echo some of my fellow council comments. Just again, many thanks to our CAO and staff who make this process seamless, informative, and transparent. As many councilors have mentioned, it's countless hours that you put in, and it doesn't go unnoticed. Many discussions, and staff start early in the year to prepare for the upcoming draft budget, and it really signifies the importance of our strategic plan when we're aligning, those items with our budget. And so again, kudos to staff for doing that, and as well as keeping us informed through the quarterly budget updates. We're seeing where we're on track with our proposed budget to our actual budget throughout the year. So it's what seems to be working. We have a good template, and everything is aligned, and it makes, I know it doesn't make your job is, I guess it makes our job easier because you put in the time and you put in the effort, and it doesn't go unnoticed. So I just wanted to say thank you to the staff that do that for us.
Others? Deputy Mayor?
I'll just echo your comments. I think this is a good news budget. It's exciting. I mean, there's massive investments in road work, massive investments in wastewater, both required and both needed in town. But at the same time, you've got Exit 12A that's just on the horizon. It's going to bring great things for this town. It's so exciting. So, good stuff.
Good. Anyone else? All right. Yes, Councilor McDonald.
I forgot you, Tammy. You're kind of important too.
Yeah, but she made us sit through that really long presentation 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, you put in a little bit of work here and there, right?
Yeah. No. Great. So, without no further ado, can I have a motion to adjourn? Councilor Thorburn, seconded by Councilor Conklin. We are adjourned. Good night, folks.